guys, welcome back to my channel where we spill tea left, right, and everywhere in between. In today's video, we are covering the fresh new information coming from David Dobrik himself on the Jeff Wittek accident, as well as Jeff's reaction to this. We have covered quite a bit of the situation up until now, including some other drama that Jeff has been in with Ethan Klein and the Bryce Hall roast, but this will be the first time that David has actually had anything to say about it. But before we get into all of the tea, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. And head over to the Hot Tea Twitter account where you can follow and send us any topics that you are dying to hear about. Now, there is a lot to get into, so get comfy, grab a snack, and let's spill some tea. David Dobrik released a new podcast episode called Discussing What Happened, and yes, it's about Jeff, and no, it's not clickbait. David has done apology videos in the past, like most people have, but this is the first time that he has spoken about the Jeff situation, even with how much Jeff has talked about it recently. As I said, we have covered a lot of the situation up until this point, so you can catch up with those videos after this one if you like, but let's talk about David's video. From the get-go, at the beginning, it seems that Jason Nash was actually the force behind getting David to sit down and do a podcast episode like this. David says that he normally likes to keep his videos light and funny, but he's gotten to the point in his life now where it's much harder to be happy. David says that his fear behind not wanting to open up to people on camera is because he feels that people aren't attracted to that side of him. Jason tells him that this video needs to happen and that people need to understand that this past year has been hard on him and that they are all worried about him and just want the old David back. Jason clarifies that the intention behind this video is not for sympathy for David, but more so David can feel better and that David has been doing himself a disservice by staying silent and not communicating his feelings and his side. Probably true, right? The silence has been weird, especially seeing as how Jeff has had plenty to say and had no issues saying it. David agrees and says that he might need help staying on track with doing more serious talks like this, and mentions that even though his comments have been saying that he seems happier than ever, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Jason flexes that podcast reign control and says that the Jeff situation needs to be addressed now.
Our friend Jeff Wittek posted some stuff about me, about the accident, and about how things have been handled, and
you didn't call him out of surgery, stuff like that.
I've never spoken about the surgery, so I think it's kind of time for that.
Jeff was invited onto this podcast episode according to Jason, but he declined, and don't worry, we are going to get to Jeff's take on this in a little bit. But David says that it's not going to be great talking about someone that isn't there, but they respect that Jeff didn't want to be on the show.
The Jeff thing is the f***ing worst. Because before I even say anything, that day is like the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I wish I would fucking do anything to take that day back.
David gets really emotional at some points throughout this video. At some points, even tearing up and holding back a cry sesh. He even says at one point that he wishes it had been him up there on the excavator and that there's never a world where he wanted this to happen and it was 100% an accident. David dives into the day of the accident and breaks it down piece by piece at the advice of Jason, as he hasn't talked about the accidents before and this could be a good place to start. David details that day, saying that it began with a collab that they were doing with someone that does a whole lot of shots wakeboarding using an excavator, and that the stunt was going to be the first thing that they filmed that day in Utah.
Jeff came up to one of my buddies. He was like, "This is boring as shit. What are we, like preschoolers? Like, let's do something cool." He said he wanted to swing from it. I loved the idea. I was like, hell yeah, let's do it.
At this point of the podcast, Natalie mentions that Jeff, herself, and another were getting their skydiving certifications and that they were very much high on life. This coincides with what Jeff had said during a recent podcast when he stated that David caught him at the right time to do this stunt, as normally he would not be so quick to do something like this. Jason chimes in as well, saying that he feels guilty that he wasn't there at the point of the day, being when the accident actually happened, because he was at a Rite Aid pooping. David explains that a lot of his past videos had this energy of everyone wanting to be involved and do something for content. While this did at times create amazing content and great videos, it also came with the downside of creating a dangerous environment. After the accident, David says that he was at the hospital with Jeff and he just didn't really know how to act. He said that he didn't know if he should be serious and supportive or make jokes and keep it light. He details a moment where Jeff himself makes a joke telling David to check his DMs.
There was a video that he found like 15 minutes before the accident that somebody posted, and he said, let's recreate this. And it was a guy swinging from an excavator and flying off. I didn't see that DM till the hospital. He's like, I didn't mean literally, haha, like he joked.
And let me just tell you, when Jeff reacts to this, okay, we'll get there. Hold on. Let me get back to David real quick.
And then he asked, he's like, can you promise me one thing? I said, what? And he's like, can you just promise that no one ever knows that this was my idea? That's the promise I broke recently.
David elaborates and says that he isn't sure why the topic of whose idea it was is such a big issue to Jeff, and that at the end of the day, the blame still falls on David for the whole thing, and he understands this. He says that he was the one driving and that it was his video, and he takes responsibility for that, so he just doesn't understand why whose idea it was is such a thing for Jeff. Jason mentions that it might be a pride issue, to which David quickly moves on. David explains that throughout everything, he does wish that Jeff had been more truthful on a lot of it. For example, keeping the accident a secret was apparently Jeff's idea, but it was now being spun in a way that was pointing at David being the one who wanted to keep it under wraps. David says that he was fully following Jeff's lead on that, and even during the documentary, just wanted to be more there for him and support him in any way that he could. But he says then the documentary filming got a little bit weird. During filming Jeff's documentary, David describes a moment where someone says that they need David to cry and quote, we really need him to understand what he's done. David says that that moment made him feel really uncomfortable and that he was being pushed into a corner and that someone wasn't being transparent or entirely honest about what was going on.
There's some things that I wish Jeff was a little bit more truthful on, but given the circumstance, it's so hard because he's hurt. So that's why I hate talking about this, because he is a victim. Like, he got fucking hurt. Like, I understand that.
Jason dives into the other issues that Jeff has that have been brought to his attention, not just the accident itself, and this included a surprise trip to Hawaii from David to everyone that just so happened to take place on a day that Jeff was getting eye surgery. As we know, Jeff and Jason are still close, and Jeff has still spoken very highly about Jason up until now, even saying that he is fearful for his friendship with him due to this drama with David. David explains the surprise Hawaii trip was never intended to be on the same day as a surgery, and that was just because they did not know when the surgeries were. Jason also brings up the medical bill situation.
And then in terms of his like medical payments, I just had accounting check and it was like $78,000 of surgery. I don't love the fact that he's going around saying I don't pay for surgeries. Like, that fucking hurts.
David says that when it comes to bills and stuff like that, he's not the one physically handling it, and he does allocate those jobs to someone else, that someone being Natalie, and that they have been asking about the bills and stuff, but are just not getting looped into surgery dates or any of that information. David says that they get blindsided when a surgery all of a sudden happens, and that they never know when they are, and that no one is telling them. He says that Jeff can send him whatever and he'll pay for it, but says that it's really unfair for him to say that they are not paying for it. As for not reaching out to Jeff at all during all of this, David says that he's just not great at communicating with this stuff and admits that he has never had a harder time trying to communicate with someone than he has with all of this stuff with Jeff. He also explains that he thought that maybe Jeff needed space and that possibly seeing David would be harder on him as this situation and accident was definitely traumatic. David says that with Jeff being this tough guy to his face, he says things like, I'm good, I'm fine, I don't need anything, but then when he does get the space, he flips out and is like, what the fuck? Why is he not reaching out to me? David also says that he has heard from numerous mutual friends that Jeff has said that if he sees David, he will beat the shit out of him. So I guess he was trying to avoid that. David continues and says that this story has kind of spun out of control and become something different from what it really was, and that the narrative is now that David forced Jeff to go up on the excavator, which is simply not true. While David says that he takes the blame and responsibility, it most certainly was not intentionally done. He says that it was a really shitty accident and nothing he can say will take it back, but he wishes that they could figure out how to move forward.
And Jeff, if you're watching, I think that you will appreciate this. I know he'll appreciate this because I think he just feels unheard.
Oh, he was watching.
I haven't mentioned this. Like, no one can even fucking tell that I want to blow my fucking brains out.
Yeah.
This weighs on me every fucking minute of every day of my life. Why are you crying?
These important conversations have happened in person, just not filmed and released for everyone to see. This gets David to tell a story about a time that he and Jeff were driving, and Jeff said that he knows David has apologized in person, but he would like for him to do it on camera, and David was more than happy to do this. So the two of them drove and had a really deep conversation, or heart-to-heart, whatever you want to call it, where David apologizes, and they both cry, and it's all on camera, and it's beautiful, right? Well, to their surprise, they get home and realize that they didn't hit record. So what do? They went out and did it all again and completely recreated the entire moment. David says he does not know what happened to that footage. It didn't end up on the documentary, but it happened. I think I recall a clip like that being on Jeff's Patreon because I was subscribed at the time.
Like I said, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about this, and I'm so sorry that this happened to you, Jeff. I'm so sorry, and I wish it was easier. I wish it was easier to deal with this. I wish we were both better communicators.
David says that he will be taking better precautions in the future and feels that he has learned a lot during this process. He says that he's learning how to better be an empath, and that in the past, when he tried to be empathetic, he was just seeing things from his own standpoint and not understanding how someone else might be feeling. So now he's working on understanding that different people handle things differently and are hurt by different things. Sociopath? Just kidding. David says that moving on does not mean forgetting. Well, what does Jeff say about the whole thing? Jeff reacted and released the video to his Jeff FM channel, and I'm here to unpack all of that as well just for you. Jeff comes right out of the gate and straight into David's video and immediately says that the reason that he declined being on the show was because he doesn't even feel comfortable being in the same room as David. Just real quick, what do you guys think about that? Do you think it's because Jeff might lose his temper? Maybe because everything is so high emotion and clearly Jeff is very angry still, which we will get into here. Jeff calls bullshit on David, saying that he likes to keep his videos light and stuff, as it sets him up in a way that if anything serious ever happens, David can fall back on that and just separate himself from the negative stuff. And as much as I try to keep my personal opinions out of stuff on here, I do agree with that, because you can't just blanket statement, I don't like the negative stuff, in an attempt to stay out of the negative stuff, especially when you are the one who created negative stuff. You know what I mean? It would be like me saying, I don't like violence, and then slapping someone in the face and then expecting them not to have a violent reaction. And when they do, I just say that I don't do that. Like, right? Anyway, Jeff is clearly super pissed about everything still and says that it's clear that David is just trying to charm his way out of everything as per usual. He says that it's taken 2 years for him to say anything at all. Jeff watches as David talks about Jeff calling the wakeboarding boring, and Jeff says that this is not how the situation happened. Swinging on the excavator was something that he actually saw Corinna do first and said that it looked like fun. Swinging like a rope swing on it, that is, not being flung around by it.
Thing is swinging fast. That was never discussed. That was completely on you.
Jeff addresses the DM that he sent to David and says that it was just meant to be a joke and it was before anything had happened, and then the fact that David is even showing this DM is for nothing. He says that this is a way of victim blaming and that it's completely ridiculous that this DM is even coming up.
And then that's the promise I broke recently.
Bro, this is complete bullshit, I swear to God. Okay, so right now David is saying that I'm there, head smashed open and on a hospital bed, but my one last wish was, David, please don't tell anyone that this was my idea.
Jeff explains in pretty graphic detail that day when he got his injury and when he was laying there in the hospital with his brains all over the place, the last thing he was thinking about was whose idea it was.
Are you that fucking sick in the head? I've never once in my life said, David, but if I die, make sure nobody ever knows that I asked you to smash my head into the crane. You sick sociopath fuck.
Jeff doesn't understand this secret thing that David mentions throughout the video and can only think that it might be that moment when they were in the car and David got a call from Kourtney Kardashian. David said, look what he did to himself, or something along those lines, and Jeff was not happy about that and told David that this would not be the way the situation would be relayed moving forward. Jeff also explains that day, the day of the accident, David had been driving that excavator for at least 9 hours and at that point must have known how to operate it, or at least knew how fast the thing could go. So Jeff says that he fully knew how fast he was going when he was up there. And as for the Hawaii trip, Jeff breaks down a lot of what happened that day with the vlogging and stuff, but the main thing that he covers is that David, or at least his assistant, absolutely knew that the eye surgery was scheduled for that same day, as there is an email thread between David, Jeff, the assistants, and the insurance company. Jeff explains that surgery is not like booking a haircut and it takes months and is always booked away in advance. So the excuse about not knowing is a lie, allegedly. Jeff also says that if they really didn't know about the surgery at the time of filming this surprise gift trip to Hawaii, then to cut him out of that vlog, like duh. And as for David trying to say that Jeff's assistant hasn't been getting back to them with surgery information or medical bill info, he calls bullshit on that too and says that he has had the best and most professional assistant accident, and they would see that he is up to date every day if they paid attention to the emails. Jeff also addresses the weirdness David felt in regards to the filming of the documentary and being told that they wanted to see him cry. Jeff says that they did that for David, literally as a favor for him. He says that they went through about 30 hours of footage and there was not one moment of any empathy from David, and he was just making jokes all the time and it didn't look good for him.
You said it's the worst day of your life. You said it literally, you have nightmares, it's the worst day of your life. When you're asked about it, you're like, why would I cry? It's no big deal.
Jeff says that this secret that David apparently was keeping and then spilled or whatever is just confusing, and he says that he has nothing to hide. Jeff says he does not know what this secret is and that he just needs to take accountability and stop blaming everyone else around him.
This motherfucker has the nerve to say that it was my idea to try to clear his name and salvage whatever he can. But you know what? Even if this does work for you, bro, I guarantee another couple months go by and your true colors will show with somebody else and you'll be right back in the same boat.
Jeff also kind of goes off on the point that David tries to make when he says that he is okay with 100% of the blame, but doesn't think that it's fair to take 150% of the blame, as if he forced Jeff to do something because he didn't.
Your whole fucking career is built off pressuring people to do shit. Everything you do in your life is begging people to fucking film shit for your vlogs.
Jeff says that David just never wanted to be associated with this accident and just wanted to sweep it all under the rug. He seems more upset that his friend Jason is sitting there letting David say all of this and supposedly lie about the situation. David says in his video that he has never wanted to silence Jeff, but Jeff says that he kind of is in a way, considering he has taken every single one of his points on the situation and called it a lie. So he may not be directly attempting to silence him, but he's shredding up all of the things that Jeff has said as a victim. Jeff says thanks for the apology, but he'll let the courts decide. So are we looking at a possible future legal situation between the two? Maybe. Jeff also says that he enjoys doing these type of reaction videos, so we'll probably do more and just address everything. So I'm here for that. Jeff cuts his video rather abruptly, and really, like, that's that. We will keep an eye out on the situation, as both sides have said that they will not be staying quiet and will be addressing things openly from now on, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. We do upload new videos every single day. And for now, let's share a moment of eye bleach and move on to enjoy the rest of our days.